Hello, I'm Kathy Taylor. If ever there was a super city, it would have to be Mexico City. Not only is this the largest metropolis on Earth, it's also one of the highest, ringed by ancient volcanoes and resting on the soft sediment of a long-vanished lake. Mexico City is really three cities: Aztec, Spanish and vibrant modern capital, each one superimposed on its predecessor. Where the three cultures merge, Aztec temple stands next to Spanish convent, overlooked by the steely eye of modern skyscrapers. Mexico City oozes life, and Mexicans live it to the full. When many cities are winding down for the evening, the bars of Mexico City are just warming up. With the whirling sounds of the mariachi players, spicy food and a strong tequila, you're ready for another day in the world's fastest city. Mexico City, a passionate city full of life and music, a fantastic mix of past and present, of peoples old and new. A city with a brooding past. With its population of 20 million people, this is the super city, the largest city on Earth and still growing. Dawn over Mexico City. In the largest square in the Western Hemisphere, the Zocalo, the Mexican flag is raised to salute a new day. The square gets its name from the Zocalo, or pedestal of a monument to independence, ordered by the dictator Santa Anna. Only the pedestal was ever completed. Early morning and the whole city seems to be on the move, concocting the mix of smog and fumes for which Mexico City is famous. Despite the fumes, the visitor is soon swept up in the infectious good humour and optimism that's the Mexican answer to all known problems. Mexico City looks to the future with a faith undimmed by experience. The past is everywhere in this city. The Zocalo, with its 16th century Spanish cathedral, its national palace and its twin town halls, is the cradle of that past. This place has seen it all. Blood sacrifices to the Aztec gods, the massacre of the Aztecs by Cortes and the Spanish, American and French invasions, the civil wars and revolutions that led to Mexico's freedom. There's an old saying in Mexico that all things begin and all things end in the Zocalo. All that remains of the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan are these stones. Cortes called it the most beautiful city in the world when he first saw it in 1519. That didn't stop him from razing it to the ground. The two cultures, Aztec and Spanish, came into violent collision. But the fusion of the two peoples gave rise to the people of Mexico today, the mestizo, the third culture. Here on the Paseo de la Reforma, ordinary Mexicans haven't much time to worry about their culture or their past. They come here to meet, to buy and to sell, to make ends meet by whatever means they can. The ruins are for the tourists. In a city of 20 million people, dreamers don't eat. For the ordinary people, history can wait. Northeast of Mexico City lie the ruins of Teotihuacan. Built on a massive scale, Teotihuacan had 600 pyramids, 500 workshops, 2,000 dwelling areas, and perhaps 200,000 inhabitants. The Street of the Dead, 5 kilometres long, led towards the Great Pyramid of the Sun, the third largest in the world. Teotihuacan was ruled by its priests. Blood sacrifice was a grim reality. But around 750 AD, this highly organised society collapsed and its people disappeared. No one knows why. Other civilizations came and went, but for all, the discovery of America by Columbus marked the end. On the Paseo de la Reforma, Columbus surveys the city for which he is responsible. Today it boasts an 8-lane highway through its centre. But there's still a city that Columbus might have recognised. The Plaza de Santo Domingo is an old Spanish colonial square. This is where the ordinary business of life goes on. People come to enjoy the fresh air and the fountains, to meet old friends, or simply to relax. The Spanish influence is everywhere in this square. Underneath the cloisters, evangelistas, professional letter writers, have set up shop. They'll type anything from love letters to bills for their frequently illiterate clients, many of whom are peasants come in from the countryside. The Spanish influence is seen at its best here in the Rococo convent of Merced, or Mercy. Look at this quiet courtyard with its beautiful cloisters and arches, its close-worked ornament and stone, its massive doors, and it's not hard to see the long shadow that Spain casts over Mexico City. The conquistadores might have brought the horse to terrify the Indians, but it's been taken over by the Mexicans with enthusiasm. This is the charreada, or rodeo, an explosion of colour and skill, and to the outsider at least, an exhilarating display of Mexicans at play. There's no doubting the enjoyment. Here's a chance to grab a cold beer and shout till you drop. This is the real Mexico City, not just a place for the tourists. Mexicans will tell you that theirs is the greatest city in the world. With its stunning paseos and towering buildings, it's certainly one of the most dramatic. Mexico City knows no limits. The site may be prone to earthquakes, the atmosphere a soup of smog and pollution, the overcrowding catastrophic. But it makes no difference. The city goes on growing. Mexico City is the city of optimism. Each day, millions of people cram into the city's 6,000 buses. Others opt for a more imaginative solution to their transport problems. The road system is well designed and planned, but it's stretched to the limit and beyond. There is a cheap and effective metro system, but unsurprisingly that too is swamped by 5 million commuters every day. Somehow, in the face of all this, Mexico City keeps moving. The Bosque de Chapultepec Park, literally the wood of the grasshoppers, has over 1,000 acres of open space, lakes, gardens and museums. There are bars and restaurants, music and entertainment. Chapultepec Castle, in the park, is the site of the last stand of Los Niños Héroes, the 6 army cadets who chose to die rather than surrender to the invading Americans. It's a museum now showing the history of Mexico from the conquest to the revolution. Mexico City is famous for its markets, where anything that moves or grows is up for sale. If you can't find it here, the chances are it doesn't exist. Here there are birds of every colour and description, from chickens to parakeets, a raucous conglomeration of feathers, cages, shrill whistles and hard bargaining. There are mountains of fresh vegetables, flowers, fruit and produce of every description. All of this is brought into the markets before dawn by the campesinos, the country people who keep this hungry city going. These markets are a lifeline for the campesinos and the estimated 5 million city poor. Everybody has something to sell. Street murals are to be seen everywhere in Mexico City. They stem from a radical tradition that saw this popular art form flourish in the 20s and 30s. Men like Orozco, Siqueiros, Rivera, passionate men who weren't content to be merely artists, left their mark on the city. This museum was the studio of the best known of Mexico's painters, the Marxist Diego Rivera. Rivera is best known for his murals. His most famous work, a sharply personal vision of Mexico's history, is in the Palacio Nacional, now the Mexican seat of government. The murals are titled The Epic of the Mexican People in Their Struggle for Freedom and Independence. For these young people out on the town in one of the city's most affluent areas, the Zona Rosa, life is good. This is a far cry from the radicalism of Rivera. American football is big in Mexico. It might be a foreign import, but remember, Mexico is the southernmost country of North America. This game is an import from the Old World, the fast and furious game of Jai Alai. It was brought to Mexico by the Spanish. If the excitement of the game isn't enough, you can bet on every point scored in every game. For sheer excitement, the charreades or rodeos take some beating. This is the real Mexico. These are the twin basilicas of the Virgin of Guadalupe. The older of the two, completed by the Spanish in 1536, marks the site of the apparition of the Virgin of Guadalupe to a humble Indian convert called Juan Diego. This is the Lourdes of Mexico. The visitation of the Virgin was recognised by the Spanish bishop Zumarraga when he saw a picture of the Virgin miraculously appear on the Indian's cloak. The old basilica was replaced by the new in 1976. Pilgrims and penitents from all over Mexico come here to pray to the Virgin. The miraculous cloak is enshrined above them in its own altar. The Catholic Virgin of Guadalupe had supplanted the Aztec gods only a few years after Cortes had razed their temples to the ground. The old basilica is now a museum of devotional art. The Aztec influence in Mexico is ever present. The people are proud of their ancestry. You may well see street performers reenacting Aztec dances. This is the Museum of Anthropology, built at a cost of $20 million in 1960. It's the jewel in Mexico City's crown. These halls hold the greatest collection of pre-Columbian artifacts in the world. The power of these brooding figures is immense as they stare out with sightless eyes to another world. It's worth visiting Mexico City, if for no other reason than to see this museum. The Alameda Park was once the site of an Aztec marketplace. The Spanish Inquisition found it a handy place to burn heretics at the stake. Today, the people visit the Alameda to enjoy the fresh air and the fountains, to have a picnic and to find a bottle of something cold. After a busy day in Mexico City, an evening at Xochimilco, the place where the flowers are planted. Boats take visitors amongst the last of the chinampas, or Aztec floating gardens, now used to grow flowers for the city. The food and the beer slip down, and the mariachi bands play on. Tenochtitlan, from which grew Mexico City, was on an island in a huge lake, of which these floating gardens are all that remains. Drinking is a serious business in Mexico City. There's a choice of 25 or more brands of Mexican beers and wines, mezcal, tequila and pulque. City is a fantastic mix of past and present, of peoples old and new. A city vibrating with life, a city of the future. The largest city on Earth and one of the most spectacular. No one who has been there could ever argue with that.